because schools only touch on punishments and everything, and it makes the situation worse.
If the English teacher say yes, she's being bullied, but the maths teacher say, no, this is just, part of learning, part of growing up. How can the teacher move forward?
Welcome to Together, a Shared Concern. I'm Ethan Seow. I am one of the EXCO members at Coalition Against Bullying for Children and Youth and one of the co-organizers of the event, Center for Cybersecurity. Today, we're going to talk about something really important, which is all about authority. And when we talk about authority and when it comes to bullying, there's a lot of different elements at play that we need to be very focused about, meaning, can we trust the authority when it comes to bullying? Do we trust the authority when it comes to bullying? If I could ask just a bit more about your experience of dealing with the authorities when it comes to bullying, when it comes to the school, or when it comes to even your parents.
So schools should change how they punish bullies, because as of now, if you're being bullied and you snitch on the bully, then you're getting then the bully is getting punished for it, and all that does is make the bully want to do different things and do more things to you, because you're now a target because you made them go through something that they didn't want to. Why I feel that schools should find a different way to get across to students that bullying is bad, rather than punishment because like the person that was bullied snitched on the bully.
I think that's a great perspective to have. I think if I were to summarize it very quickly, the punishment on the bully seemed to worsen the situation, and it seems to just aggravate the bullies to want to bully more rather than solve the problem in entirety. Would that be the case?
Touching on what Ty said, I think that the schools focus more on, in a sense, like painting the bully as like the bad guy, and that there isn't much we can do to help the bullies, because in their eyes it's like, oh, they bully someone and they need to learn their lesson, therefore we're going to suspend them, we're going to give them detention. And I don't think they really think about like that there are more than just punishment that can actually change the situation. And I do think that this is why a lot of victims, they don't want to report anything, because they know that when they report the bully gets punished, the bully is going to come back and continue to bully them or make it worse. And therefore they know that in a sense, I can't really trust the authority that way.
So just to add on to what they've already shared, I think that oftentimes in schools, like the systems put in place to stop bullying is just a temporary fix. So like what Ty mentioned, for suspensions, detentions, maybe even like demerit points, it only stops the bully from bullying momentarily, but then after that, they may still revert back to their old ways and continue to bully people. So I think what's lacking in a lot of school systems is that the schools don't look past like stopping the bully in this one moment in time. And they don't really like focus on how do we help the bully like change, like turn over a new leaf after this one incident, so that we can prevent him from doing such things in the future.
I think that's a very good perspective from all three of you. Thank you very much for that. I just want to bring in a legal aspect about this, I think, because when we talk about authority, I mean, the ultimate authority at the end of the day is the court. I would like to actually ask Victor, as a lawyer, like from your perspective, hearing this, and looking at what you know about the law, what can be done in terms of as authority to support youths who are struggling with this situation in school, and with the perspective that the punitive measures are not really working for them?
Thank you, Ethan. Just adding on to that point about temporary relief, it's actually not an issue that's just confined to youth. I actually experience it in a lot of current cases for instance, defamation or harassment. So some cases where clients actually come to us to actually initiate some sort of action to actually cease the bullying behavior, like for instance by issuing a letter of demand to the person, actually instigates a flurry of activity that actually escalates the situation. So especially pertaining to cyberbullying, let's say we have cases where we issue letters and the perpetrator actually posted a letter online, which actually led to a greater onslaught of support for the person actually spreading the message. I do understand where these views are coming from, where even if you approach authority, it can actually result in a situation where it's worse off in the long run for yourself. So pertaining to how this can be addressed, I would say that there should be two main approaches to this. One is improving the access of such legal or authoritative measures to persons looking to seek relief from these kind of issues. Okay, for instance, if I mention about the POHA application, a lot of people actually find it very daunting to initiate a POHA application or to actually seek out any sort of relief because they think of the legal costs involved, they think of all of the measures they actually undertake and the sort of sanctions they may receive from the other party. Courts have actually simplified this process nowadays, and they have actually provided, for instance, on the State Courts website, they have step-by-step procedures on how to actually do this application in person. So we have had clients that come in with an existing application that they have already secured an expedited order, for instance, for temporary protection from the bully, and where they want us to actually just to enforce the order. So this actually saves a lot of time and cost for persons involved. The second point on the temporary relief is that there should be a separate approach apart from the adversarial approach that the current legal system actually adopts. Instead of seeking to directly punish parties using the current regime under POHA or other aspects of the law, there should be some sort of avenue where parties can actually obtain some sort of temporary relief, but at the same time also work together, a collaborative long-term solution to actually address this issue at its root.
Thank you very much for this. So from what I'm hearing from you, it is happening on a legal ground as well, even when people are trying to protect themselves from bullying, and it actually does worsen the situation. But so one of the best ways is, okay, firstly, increasing accessibility, but secondly is even having other social or even public opportunities to support the victim to manage the situation better. The next person I would definitely like to ask is Dr. N. If I could understand a bit more from your perspective of, being a huge advocate for women and, definitely the minorities in terms of that area. And how have you seen the evolution of the legal systems in terms of protecting people who are victims of, this kind of harm?
Actually, to carry on from what Victor has said, even under POHA, they also have a mediation process in which parties are encouraged to go before a mediator, and usually it's a judge mediator from the courts itself. So in that way, I think it's not only adversarial, which is what it would be ordinarily, but I do know that POHA, they do get almost immediate attention to the harassment. So there will be a stop. There must be a stop. But the stop is not the end of everything, yeah, because and it has also consequences if there's any breach of it. So there, I think, is a very good alternative to other protection orders, because under the Women's Charter, they have the expedited order as well as the personal protection order and a domestic exclusion order. But those are mainly for matrimonial cases. And the reason why POHA came about was then it's it's kind of an extension, but it isn't. It's a different process from the matrimonial process, yeah.
So there are protections which is to stop the trigger, stop the problem, and then there's actually the mediation portion, which is actually about how to support the victims and find a place of, if we can term it, restorative kind of direction, or more towards how do you help the victim, right? Yeah, and stopping it. With that, I think the legal side of the question is kind of understood. If I want to go back to the work at CABCY and what we do, I go back to this from your perspective, Esther, because you were one of the biggest pusher of POHA previously as well. Yes, and with that thing in place, what do you see CABCY's role is in, helping dealing with bullying in school?
I first want to further explain why POHA came about. POHA is Protection of Harassment Act. It came about in 2013, and when it was before it was written, we had a conference, and then I was one of the key speakers because I was one of the key pusher that was up there, together with the Women's Association and Singapore Children's Society. But the thing is, when we sat together at a round table to look at the law, what POHA should look like, because bullying will be classified under harassment in that law, in that act. And I make sure that children and youth will not be punished severely, but if after one try and two try, I think there is steps to take, and if bullying doesn't stop, youth or bullies can be subjected to community services, and also maybe parents or the authority who didn't do their due diligence could also be fined. And it's a very long process, but they have to have had rectification first, attempt to do that. So the law requires some steps to be taken. It is tedious, especially for students who are being bullied in school. Yeah, but we celebrated that because we now have a law in Singapore since 2013 against bullying, but it's categorized under harassment. Yep. And what do we do then? We celebrate, but look, onus is on parents to actually activate that, to want to do something about it. It's not for CABCY. So if you say, what can CABCY do about it? We can only say that, there is POHA, there are things that you can do. Go get a lawyer, or you can seek help. If you can't afford, go for legal aid. These are things that we can advise that we can give. On top of that, I think apart from community services for bullies, right, I do think the restorative practice must still continue to come in place. And that is why we are here today together, shared concern, but we want to talk about shared responsibility. And this shared responsibility has to be coming from the parents of the bullies and the victims and the school to come together and work on, hey, let's make things work. And we are dealing with the behavior, not the person. And in response to what they were sharing earlier on, where the bullies will come back and revenge when victims report. That's because bullies come back to revenge, and bullies were not attended to sufficiently. But if they know that, hey, you know what, we're dealing with the behavior, not you. And that could have been a little bit more different. And this probably can be the message we try and send out these days.
I think it all begins with, do we identify it as a problem? Now that it is in the law, it is a problem. And then we can start talking about how can we better solve the situation through different measures. And one of the major parts about this, and why we're doing this as a shared responsibility today, is that we want to educate more people about what we can do, right? So now that we've gotten to the point about talking about authority, I think, and hearing the stories in this front, I think I do have a question actually for Poyok. If you can share a bit more about, as an educator, right, what are the struggles as an authority figure in solving, bullying in the schools?
Teachers all have different tolerance level for bullying. So even if you have a teacher who truly believes that bullying is taking place, you need your peers to work together. For every student, there are a few teachers. All right? If the English teacher say, yes, she's being bullied, but the maths teacher say, no, this is just, part of learning, part of growing up. How can the teacher move forward? Yes, the teacher in a way is the authority figure, but the hands are tied, right? So I come back to the same thing, the culture. If the teachers all share that same mindset of what bullying is, you can move forward. Because then you'll be with the students. If the students know that the teachers understand what bullying is, they'll be more inclined to trust them and talk to them and trust that there will be steps that they can work on. And the teachers then can empower the students. Because the students are the eyes, of the school, right? Because the teachers can't see everything. The students are the eyes. The students see what is happening. And the teachers need to trust that what the students are coming to them to say is true. Then it's not dramatizing and big story about things.
I think from a perspective of an educator as well, the educator in a classroom is also very much a figure of authority, and he has that responsibility to manage any kind of a bullying situation. When Esther and I talked years ago, when we talk about bullying and our films, and you introduced me to the work of CABCY, one of the things that I remember telling or sharing with Esther is about how, as a fellow advocate, I always want the problem to be about bullying, not about the bully. All right, we are trying to solve or target or get rid of the bullying problem, not to target the bully, because the bully, as we have understood, is also very much a struggling problem in the bullying problem. The bullying problem can be cyclical, it can be passed down, it can be learned behavior, and it's the bullying that we want to end. So the whole idea of singling out a bully is it could be part of the problem, the whole idea of singling out. And now, for example, I'm now charged with harassment, or I'm now charged with whatever. Is that, I love it that the kids are, the young people are pointing out this very, very insightful second layer of perspective of how that whole, now we are pointing now, it's him. He did it to me. And what did I do? What did I do? Now so now it's me, or how now, with some kind of a law or some kind of a thing, how it can be abused to the point I can now use this to point my finger at anyone. And anyone, by right of how we agree to stand against bullying, should now target that guy now. So this is also kind of like a very important or opportune moment for me to ask the question in the segment for authority. Could laws sometimes also be abused? It's something that I don't have an answer for.
I'm pretty sure the lawyers would like to answer this.
I mean, whether this particular law can be abused in its present state, I would say yes, there is a potential for it to be abused. And there are situations where a party is actually clearly in a superior position than the other party, and they're using their resources to actually clamp down on any sort of opinions of the other party, or to clamp down from the other, to prevent the other party from taking any sort of action. So, in a sense, the POA actually is quite widely worded. So, any single act, it does not have to be a recursive act. It can be a single act, can be deemed to be a harassment, an act of harassment. So sometimes if a party is disadvantaged in a certain way, like say they do not have a legal representation, they do not know the processes, and they do not respond to the maybe a summons that's filed accordingly, they may be put in a significant legal disadvantage. So the way to actually really remedy this is actually just through education. You have to educate and make the process simple for people to understand, and for people to really understand their rights and their responsibilities in relation to these laws that we already have in place to protect the victims.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Does this give you any comfort that the law is on your side, personally? But you also see that there's a separation between what the authority says and you know what the law says and what is actually enacted on the ground, right? Where we're lacking is the next few steps, and that's why we're having this shared concern today. And we're taking this shared responsibility by having this conversation. I think this gives us a really nice segue to end today's session about authority. This is the end of episode 5, where we go into episode 6, where we talk about activism and how do we solve this problem.